Night Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, the secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, Renee Barnett.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Night Vision once again. As you can see, I am back in Los Angeles, back at my home base, after having spent the last 6 weeks over in southern France with my good colleague here, James Martin. We're going to tonight present a little bit of a wrap-up of our France expeditions, and we're also going to offer a really nice surprise, and that is on the next hour of the show, we are going to play an interview with Tim Wallace Murphy that has never, ever been seen before. It was taped shortly before he left the planet. And it's a lovely, lovely interview that I was able to see when I was in France. And I found it to be very informative and very touching and also instructive. He's going to share what he wants us to all know as he makes his exit. So that's something that's really, really special. Also, we're going to have a sneak preview of the interactive Templar map that James Martin has been working on for the past few years. It is just an amazing accomplishment, and it's ever a work in progress, as it will remain. So we're going to be offering that on our website at some point in the very near future. So people who subscribe to the map will also be eligible for you'll also get all the updates, because as sites are added, the map will be updated, and you might even assist in the updates, because we're going to be asking people if they know of any Templar sites that, or even suspected Templar sites that you want us to check out. Let us know, and we'll do that. So we're going to have a look at that. Also, want to remind everyone that the Bloodline movie, the documentary, is now available for the first time in like a decade. That also can be found on our website. And maybe it'd be a good time just right at the top of the show here to play the trailer for Bloodline. There may be people who are new to the subject matter, may not be familiar with the film, but it's a movie that I produced that had a small theatrical release, got a lot of critical acclaim, and sparked a huge controversy. So it concentrates mainly on the idea of a bloodline between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, about a secret society that protects this great secret society known as the Priory of Zion. Our efforts to crack into that secret society, interviews with representatives of it, and a lot of other action that goes on. It's really filmed like a movie and not like a documentary. It was sort of, we filmed it on the go. So if we could please, let's have a look at that trailer.
Do you believe, or does the Priory believe or have evidence that Jesus married Mary and had children?
Yes.
Is there a bloodline of Jesus and Mary?
There is a bloodline of Jesus and Mary, yes. There is.
Il y a deux organisations, le Prieuré de Sion et l'Église catholique, l'Opus Dei.
Are you a member of the Priory of Zion?
Yes, I speak on their behalf.
They're in possession of information and artifacts that have never come to light before.
What if they really did produce the body of Jesus or evidence of Mary and Jesus' marriage?
She looks pregnant, right?
She does to me.
This thing is massive. There's a whole network of Masonic lodges with links to the Vatican, to the CIA. The bloodline idea is real, so don't think they won't kill you to keep it covered up.
Hey Bruce, it's me. We had your cell phone checked and they're pretty sure there's some sort of a bug on it.
Est-ce que toi, tu sens un danger?
Bruce, they know you're there. Do not go to that meeting tonight.
They claim they have a body, and that if this body is revealed, then it's incontrovertible proof.
Is Mary Magdalene buried somewhere in this map?
Tout à fait, bien sûr. Avec celui du Christ.
I feel that I'm being led to the fact that you have the body of Mary Magdalene.
C'est un sujet dangereux.
Don't ask me any more about that.
If it's all just a hoax, then who cares enough to tap my phone in a Paris hotel? Who cares enough to intercept emails?
You have to go up a bit, much further.
There's a tomb there.
Attention, en fait je suis trop chargé.
Here it is. Where are the other guys?
Come in! Come in!
Oh my god, it's a body.
And there you have it. That is the trailer for the film Bloodline, available at our website, newrennies.org. That's www.newrennies.org. And hope you'll come and visit our site. It is a work in progress. Also available now on our site, if you're interested, is in getting a copy of the Priory of Zion dossiers. It's a collection of correspondence and documents that we collected over a number of years during the course of the production of the film. So we published it for a while, and then we ran out of copies, and people have continued to ask for it again. So it's available now in digital form for you to download on our website as well. But without further ado, I want to bring in my colleague, James Martin. He's our historian. Hello.
Good evening, afternoon,
I miss
morning,
being there. I see you're in the office there, and I'm feeling very sentimental because I'm not there anymore. But I want to thank you again for your wonderful hospitality and especially all your good cooking. It was great. And then of course Max is a chef, so I couldn't go wrong with the food there. It was wonderful. But we had a lot of fun. We got to go explore some new sites, some new ones that I had never been to, and some that even you had not been out to view yet. So that was really, really interesting. So I don't know if we want to wrap up a little bit about some of those sites, what we did and where we're going from there on those. But then also I wanted to get into, we were talking about Tim Wallace Murphy. For those who may not know, Tim Wallace Murphy was a prolific author in the field of, I would say, bloodline research. And related subjects. I was just looking today online at, I don't even know how many books Tim wrote. Do you, James?
Well, I think it was 14, 15.
I think it might have even been more than that. I don't know.
Quite possibly, yes.
I'm always running across one and I'm going like, wait a minute, I don't even know that book. In fact, there was a book that I noticed today of Tim's that I'm going to have to look at. And I don't know how it slipped by me, or somehow I forgot about it. It was a book called Mark of the Beast. Have you seen that?
Yeah, that was with one of his friends, Trevor Ravenscroft, I
Oh, was
believe.
that with Trevor? Oh,
Yeah, he died midway through writing that, and Tim finished it off. I think there was Mark of the Beast, and I can't recall the groundbreaking work of Ravenscroft just before that book. But yeah, definitely worth the read for
yeah,
sure.
I'm absolutely going to have to see if I can get a copy of that. Do you have a copy there?
I certainly do. Yes.
See, if I'd known that, I could have read it while I was there, or snuck it into my suitcase, maybe. But
there's, I mean, it's one of those books that when I was younger, without going into the circumstances of my upbringing, one of the key things was a bit of escapism. And I was very much interested in two topics at the time. One was the Kingdom of Bhutan, of all things. And the other part was based upon a graphic novel by Jane Jensen that really got me into the whole mystery of Rennes-le-Château, the Rex Deus families. And if it wasn't for that Jane Jensen graphic novel, it then developed into a computer game, which had a fictionalized 3D version of Rennes-le-Château within it. I wouldn't have then asked for, Christmas and birthdays then, which is pretty much the same thing for me. I wouldn't have asked for Tim's books, and of course, there was at least a book every year up until I got well into adulthood. So yeah, there's a lot of books that I've read that Tim's had his hands in, and also plenty of books that I keep finding. I mean, you were mentioning you'd found was it Mark of the Beast? There was one that there were three sort of audio books he was involved in on Audible, which I've never listened to, which was interesting. Again, recapping on his beliefs of what was known as the Rex Deus families, which were very interesting group of people. The proposal is that there has been a esoteric and deeply esoteric knowledge passed down the centuries across Europe. Although, remember when Tim was with me, asking him, "Isn't this?" I sort of reread Rex Deus, and it reads like a continuation of some of the perhaps Judaic principles continuing through European history. He just smiled, and that's one of the beauties of his works. Every time you read, you pick up something new. It's a bit like the film Airplane in a way. Every time you watch that film, there's something new. The same with Tim's books, and I would definitely recommend reading Trevor Ravenscroft.
Oh, I'm gonna have to do that. It's funny you mentioned sort of how you first got your interest sparked in this subject matter, and I always love to ask people, especially when I run into people that are there, what drew you here? What was your first exposure to this place or this subject matter? And it's really interesting always to hear people's personal stories. A lot of people, of course, originally said they came because they had read Holy Blood, Holy Grail back in the 80s when it was released, the book by Bajent Lee and Lincoln, which sort of introduced, onto the public stage this idea of this village, and not only that, but an idea of a possible marriage of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, a possible survival of Jesus of the crucifixion, and all kinds of really radical ideas at that time that were highly controversial. And then, of course, we had a resurgence of all that, in the new millennium with the Da Vinci Code, which, certainly drew on the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail, along with some other works, but drew on it to the extent that, a major character in the book and in the film was based on the three authors of Holy Blood, Holy Grail.
I remember reading that book for the first time, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and was absolutely dumbfounded by what I'd seen, what I'd read within it. It was absolutely incredible. Then reading other works, and of course, as I said, this was my little escapism, and then it was like someone had found the treehouse. The Da Vinci Code comes out, and then there's a plethora of documentaries, of which you can watch a number of them on YouTube with Tim and with various other people. And it was really interesting because I got up to Rennes-le-Chateau expecting, I didn't quite bring a shovel and metal detector, but I was expecting clues everywhere and whatever else. And I was really expecting a very emotional journey up to this, this sort of 4-kilometer hike, albeit in a car, up to Rennes-le-Chateau, and was expecting, it to be very emotional, and absolutely nothing like that happened. However, I remember standing atop the car park, as it was then, looking over into the hills and into the deep Pyrenees, and just being absolutely gobsmacked by the scenery. I later found out that for me, Rennes-le-Chateau is very, I don't know, my interest has moved on from it, but the area surrounding it, I mean, Rennes-le-Chateau for me looks very much like, geographically, it looks like a satellite dish. It's sort of the epicenter of this huge whirlwind surrounding it, full of mystery, history, good food, good wine, I believe, and just this absolute. There's something for everyone here.
It's it's like Rennes-le-Chateau is it's the shiny thing that people go and grab for, but when you get there, you find out it's so much more, and that's really almost a distraction. But I think it does serve its purpose. I think it has gotten a lot of people interested in the area, in the history, and which turns out to be our history. So it is quite. But we've been talking about Tim. We were going to be showing that interview that he did next hour, but it's funny because I think I told you, I felt like I wanted to talk about Rosalind for some reason, even though this is a France wrap-up show, and I kept thinking, why do I keep wanting to talk about Rosalind Chapel in Scotland? And then I thought, well, that's kind of appropriate because, of course, I can't really think about Rosalind without thinking about Tim. He's so tied to that place, and he loved it so much, and they loved him. But also, we were talking about Chartres Cathedral, which, again, that was another place that he was very connected to and used to take groups to. And it was so wonderful, to be able to visit some of these sites with him, because he has his own stories and his own history and his own research about each one of those. But there's so much to these places, and there's so much more to learn from these places.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that certainly, I can't think of Rosslyn. I used to live about an hour away, so I was fortunate enough to be literally on Hadrian's Wall, which is a Roman wall, fascinating as that is, with lots of Mithraic buildings and other such things. But then up to Rosslyn, this place that I remember Tim really speaking to me at great length about, and with excitement as well, about Rosslyn, and about the area, Ballintroduch, at the nearby town now called Temple, and all these other places. There was one thing that always, and really for me, something that I would like to do within my life, which was a pilgrimage. Now, we've all heard about the pilgrimage routes, the Camino routes to Santiago de Compostela, St. James, in other words, up in Galicia in northwestern Spain. And we see the clamshell as being this symbol, and you can see that carved within churches. Sometimes on the ends of Templar swords and other knight swords, people who had undertaken that pilgrimage. But this thing really stuck out with me, and it was it goes by a variety of names. Now, I'm not remotely versed in the so-called chakras or anything like that, but this pilgrimage route doesn't end at Santiago de Compostela. It begins there. And it's known as the pilgrimage route of the philosopher, of the alchemist. It's known as the Mason's route by some, or that's just a handful of people who've referenced it like that. And it starts off at Santiago de Compostela, moves to the Cathedral of Notre Dame, La Dalbade in Toulouse, then to Orléans, Saint-Croix, Cathedral, then to Chartres Cathedral, to Notre Dame de Paris, to Amiens, before then, hopping on to the Eurostar, I'm guessing, or the medieval equivalent, up to the area that we call Rosslyn today, or at Rosslyn Chapel. And each.
So after, excuse me for interrupting, but this is really interesting. So after Amiens in France, the next stop is Rosslyn?
Yeah.
Are there places in between as after they cross over the channel?
I'm next to certain that there are places to go to, but this pilgrimage route is those key points. And the key points are allegedly, I should say, meant to reflect particular earth chakras. Now, this isn't a belief of mine. If you wish to get into chakras, there are people who can talk at great length. But I forget which way round this is, but I believe that the head chakra is at Rosslyn, or it might be the heart chakra, and the head or heart chakra would be Santiago. And each point is meant to depict particular chakras of the earth. Now, how true that is in history, I don't know, but enough people know about it, I would suggest today, that, again, it doesn't really matter. If people believe it, then perhaps they can charge it with their beliefs. Who knows? But it's a very interesting route, and it sort of goes in the reverse way that you would expect. There are other notions with this. Now, I've visited four of the principal places on this route, and they each have something similar in common. Most have a labyrinth. Perhaps not Rosslyn. Well, certainly not Rosslyn as it stands today. But the other part is they're near flowing water and areas of very ancient belief, so Celtic belief, most certainly. So I have spoke to some people who have said that these are also on the so-called ley lines. And there is a belief that water helps to charge, and one part of walking the labyrinth helps to charge you too. Now, unfortunately, at Chartres, the labyrinth there is often covered by chairs, and a few frowns off people if you attempt to walk it when there are no chairs obscuring it.
A lot of times, I think they don't like the people walking on it. Somebody got a rare shot of the labyrinth without the chairs all over it. But yeah, I remember when I was there, which has been a number of years ago, um, they had all the chairs out, and it felt as though they were trying to draw attention away from the labyrinth. Um, they had lots of people, I think, flooding in there, with Da Vinci Code in their eyes, and they were trying to downplay as much as possible.
But what was incredible about that book is a lot of the places that we're talking about aren't mentioned in the book.
Right.
And yet, people have made various connections between
to those places. Exactly.
So, again, just reiterating the Da Vinci Code, I suppose, it's a bit like you've got some sort of cordial and you've just left it there for a while and it begins to separate. And the Da Vinci Code sort of came up and stirred it all up again and refired people's imaginations. And that for me is really interesting because, I mean, we'll no doubt talk about Rosslyn later, but, Rosslyn Chapel was in desperate need of renovation prior to the Da Vinci Code. It had received funding, but, I was reading that prior to the Da Vinci Code, they were getting something like 30,000 visitors a year. And after the Da Vinci Code, even 10 years after the Da Vinci Code, that's up to, nearly 1/5 a year plus. So and there's a lot of, one problem that we have in history, you must be objective. So you must look at things from a factual basis. Never ever look at, if you ever read a history book, don't read it with today's eyes. Real key tip in this. You've got to put yourself in the shoes of the people who were experiencing, these cathedrals, Rosslyn at the time. But a lot of that is lost to history. So when you have this great churn, this new interest, people come with new ideas. And not all of them fit, not all of them are right. But the point is, if you keep an open mind, that's for the things that we don't have answers to. That reimagining, that repurposing, that let's look at it in a different way, can really help.
Yeah. You mentioning, those two different pilgrimage routes, the, Santiago route and then the one to Rosslyn that begins at Santiago de Compostela. There seem to be these particular routes that people are following. People have made obviously pilgrimages to Jerusalem and places like that. I remember being in Nottingham, England, and there stands a pub there called Ye Old Trip to Jerusalem is the name of the pub, and it's been there since I think like 1100 or something like that. And it's just
that was amazing. A long trip.
Yeah, it's a long trip, but I wonder, like, when, you were saying that the Rosslyn trip is basically along some sort of chakra lines, and we've heard, that some of these routes are along ley lines. I don't know if you've heard of, I don't know what the name of them really are, but I've heard them referred to as I think the Mary and Michael lines that run up through Great Britain. Do you think that these were all planned along these certain routes in order to enhance whatever spiritual journey that people might have been on? I brings to mind, I don't know if you've seen that movie. It was several years ago, it starring Martin Sheen and also his son Emilio Estevez, called The Way. And it's about a young man who, finds himself on a spiritual journey. He's trying to talk his father into coming along. His father's too busy, some big Wall Street guy or something, and he doesn't want to take the time for that nonsense. His son ends up dying, And so the father decides, he must take this trip on his own and walk the pilgrimage route to Santiago de Compostela. And all these sort of amazing things happen along the way. But do you think that these routes were chosen because of those kinds of things?
My own view is you have a very real phenomenon known as the telluric currents, which comes from the telluric comes from the Latin meaning tellus or terrus, which means earth, and these are due to magnetism. They birds, bees, insects navigate by them. I'm reminded just quickly of a story Tim told me of someone who was he was an RAF pilot, and he'd explained that he believed in telluric currents and ley lines, specifically ley lines. And some officer said to him, "You don't believe in that nonsense, do you? Invisible lines on the ground?" And he says, "Of course I do." He says, I flew by them during the war. I said, "What?" I said, "Well, yeah, it's just we call them latitude and longitude." Now, with that in mind, there may very well be something within particular currents, particular fields, things like this that have been tapped by ancient peoples, of course. I mean, our society is drained of any real connection to nature. From honeybees, for example, we've seen population decline. My own view on that is, well, we are bombarding on top of the climate and the planet that's heating in part due to our activity. You also have the world which is bombarded with Wi-Fi, microwaves, electricity, and so it's sort of drowning things out. I mean, one thing, I spoke to a number of people much more learned than I in this. I've said that there's a strange phenomena that occurs when you are on your phone. Now, some people, they'll be on their phone, and 20 minutes later wonder why it is they're in the garden. They've just wandered around the house without knowing. But it might be to do with shutting off, I don't know, your pineal receptors or some of your other receptors, meaning that you've just ended up somewhere and actually it shut off the ability to see that. Now, is that perhaps what's going on with insects? It's beyond me to be fair, but I do tend to think that we've missed are missing quite a bit of what our ancient. I mean, stone circles, for example. I've spoke to you privately about them. Grew up with them, kind of thing. And clearly relating to the skies. Each are subtly different. There were different types of them. Why were they there? Why were they in those particular places? You have, the church comes along over time and builds upon areas of previous pagan worship, as or perhaps earth worship or sun worship or whatever it might be, that seem to be near these flowing rivers, flowing water, perhaps on a hill, perhaps not, and areas where some people believe that there are these ley lines. Who are we to dismiss that idea, by the way?
Exactly. Yeah, I do think that there are layers of knowledge, of information, of data, whatever you want to call it, that we're not tuned into specifically, or have not been so much. We tend to overlook things and sometimes dismiss things out of hand. I know, I have this problem, I guess, with left brain thinking of, trying to explain everything away. On the other hand, I do believe a good dose of skepticism is healthy, so that you just don't swallow everything hook, line, and sinker. Doesn't mean I haven't been fooled. I've been famously fooled, but certainly we use those abilities to try to keep us on track. But
my question would be on the ley lines and things like this. Now, magnetic lines in the Earth are measurable for sure. The Earth's magnetic current is measurable. My thoughts on this are, I mean, what tends to happen is we end up with this notion really that if science can't explain something, then no one else is allowed to have a thought about it because science hasn't explained it. It happens in the academic world. Certainly if you're studying history, no, this happened, and we'll allow a few slight variations to the official narrative, but if you go left of track, then you'll be dismissed, and then there's a lot of sort of ganging up. The reality is, I mean, look, I just want to, Tony Rathman's just joined us. So,
I see him there.
Thanks for joining, Tony, because actually I was just going to say, ley lines, ghosts, let's throw in vampires, why not?
Yeah.
All across our societies.
Speaking of Tony Rathman, before we started the show, Bill was sharing with us some of the ghost hunt that he went with Tony and Cherie on, and it looked pretty weird. It looked pretty spooky when they got that. It looked like a little person. How do you explain those kinds of things? They're there. It's like you can't just dismiss them out of hand. And that's what's good about, I guess, the development of technology, is because those things are measurable. They are quantifiable. And we didn't have that luxury before, but somehow our predecessors knew these things. I don't know if they had some kind of technology or whether they were just more sort of tuned in than we seem to be these days.
This is one of the things, we've discussed doing a sort of time traveler's guide to the medieval period, something like that, or time traveler's guide to the Romans, or whatever. But the one thing I remember, we were driving at night, I think it was a week or two ago, and it was absolutely pitch black, if you remember. And I had some slight issues with my headlights as well until we left the Ord.
So weird.
Slightly strange. But it was pitch black. And I said to you, well, this is the reality for people before electricity comes along and allows us to, I've got lights in this room. It's bright as the sun.
Yeah.
It's dark, and your senses begin to adjust and begin to attune. So, look, I'm not going to go back on my quals or anything like that, by quality qualifications. I'm not going to go back and say, well, actually, let's scrap that and, we'll just believe anything. I, too, would try and remain grounded in some reality. But equally, I do have an open enough mind to, to at least explore. And if I explore and I think, actually, no, then that's fine. But we should at least...
that's key, is, remaining open-minded for everything, check everything out. And, we've got Tony Rathman there in the chat room, and I know I've seen them work, Tony and Cherie and their group work together, and they actually absolutely try to debunk themselves, before they just say, okay, yeah, this is a kid, or this is a ghost, or this is that. They go through through the equipment, they go through everything, they review all the material at great length later. I know Cherie does a lot of that, and you're going through hours and hours and hours of footage, so that they can really find the gems if they're there. but not just jumping on the bandwagon with everything. I think it's, good to have that amount of skepticism. Yeah, Tony says, you have to be skeptical of everything, which, saves you a lot of problems in the end, But anyhow, I'm so anxious to talk about your map a little bit more. I hate to sort of jump in right in the middle, but I'm kind of not. I think it's, I really am so excited about it. And I know I keep going on and on about it, but I'm just telling you, it's something unique. And and I'm talking to you, James Martin, I keep going on and on about it, but it's because I believe that this is something, that everybody is going to be really excited about and be able to participate in. And it's something that's never been done before. We've talked about, in fact, I brought you a copy of the Templar Chronology by George Smart, which at the time, I guess that's been out at least 10 years or longer now. It was just such a gem, to find it, because he takes this in this small book and, sort of details everything that happened of importance with the Templars. And it was just an invaluable reference. And so, but we got the map now, so that's even...
Yeah, sure. One of the key things about the map was, which you should be able to see playing. One of the key things about the map is it started with me. One of the things that I teach in my day job is, other than law, is occupational safety and health, and one of the key principles is mapping. And I had a notion of, actually setting a website up called Esotericum, in which one of the videos that we're going to play of Tim later was based for that website. And so having a map visually initially was to be able to see where the Templars were, where they were concentrated, and then perhaps explore why. Now, what you can see just in front of you for those who are listening to this is, who are watching this, was just a bit of a flavour of the map itself, and it was just me recording my screen and showing you how the map works. The notion is, I've been undertaking this now for 4 years, somewhere in that region, and I think it's going to take another couple of years. So this very much is still a work in progress.
But it's not going to be a couple of years before we post it. I can't wait that long.
No, it won't be a couple of years. But the idea is you can click on a cross, and when you click on a cross, as you've just seen, it will give you some more information, and crucially, it's sourced information. There isn't a cross on there that doesn't have a minimum of one source. I keep adding sources to existing places on that map, and in some areas where I've been able to get pictures, they've been uploaded to the map too. But the idea is, once I've completed as best as I can, is then perhaps to begin to map actually how much land Templars owned. So, for example, near Braine-le-Château, there's a village called Coisa, a town called Esperanza, and Campansuor. The Templars had a lot of land there. Over in the Fenriad, on the approach to Perpignan, quite a lot of land there. They held a lot of land around Selby and in Yorkshire, as well as in Aberdeenshire. And one of the concept, I was just reading something before, actually. The Templars only had 2 preceptories in Scotland. Well, I find that quite astonishing, given the fact that I've got. I actually translated. I think I mentioned this on the previous show, and I know that I was talking very excitedly when I was doing this last January for a member of the aristocracy, that sort of intermediary between them. That there was actually another temple building at Temple Liston, and so the more you dig and the more you explore, the more you find. And as I've mentioned previously, the antiquarian, the historian Maidment, who in the Victorian period, towards the end of that, said there were only 2 preceptories in Scotland, and there are none in Argyllshire. Well, that's a very curious statement. So off I went, and we'll go on about this in the future, but found quite a few Templar-looking, at least, sites.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, some people, I think, just don't know, just don't realize. But I think that probably at some point, they were trying to sort of suppress the fact that it was a Templar site because it didn't go along with whatever they were pushing, of their own. So I think that, some of these places are forgotten. Others, I think, were, purposely sort of hidden or called something else.
It's possible. I mean, the other thing is, and a key problem is when the Templars were disbanded, certainly in England, Scotland, and in other countries, it wasn't like in France where they were all arrested at the same time. In a lot of occasions, they weren't. They were just allowed to carry on. So who ended up running the former bits of farmland, farmhouses, barns? Who was it that was still running them? And there's a lot of questions about that. There aren't any records. It's almost as if quite a large swathe of the Templar sites, which were meant to have transferred to the Knights Hospitaller, or the Knights Hospital, didn't. Well, I can't prove otherwise because there aren't any records. So, was there continuous occupation? Did they exchange hands? And if so, why wasn't there any documentation? There are in other places, and we can see that in the various cartularies, as they're called.
And
so,
were there places like, I would imagine, like if you were going to make a static map or make a map of the holdings, the land holdings of the Templars, it would have, I would imagine, expanded and contracted at some points. For instance, when King Alfonso was of Navarre, was it Navarre?
Which one? There were many.
The one who left his
he was
the Knights Templar.
Yeah, so that was he was called Alfonso the Battler, and he was the king of Aragon.
Aragon, okay. And
yes.
So by the time that he gave his property over to the Templars, had their properties, I would imagine, had already shrunk because of they were. By the time he did that, it was sort of the end of the Templars as they were known at the time.
Oh, that was the opposite. This was right at the beginning. He left
really?
He left his will. It was roughly around 11 years after the order was officially created. I think it was 1131. It was really early.
Oh my gosh!
And that was the bit that had puzzled me. And one of the key problems for the Templars were the fact that they weren't a large enough movement to occupy, even if they wanted to, Aragon. So they ended up taking 10 key castles already built. They moved them into preceptories. We've visited one, if you recall, but they just didn't have the manpower to occupy those places. So, yeah, there were some Templar sites that, after a while, they said, we don't want this, and then gave it to another order or gave it back to the original landowners, the people who donated that land in the first place. So yes, it would have varied over time, but not by too much. You'd have seen a more of an expansion each year if you were to do it that way. One of the reasons, by the way, so to keep droning on, but one of the reasons that I wanted to do it on Google Maps is because it copies over to Google Earth, and you can begin to see the geography of where they were settling, which for me was pretty important, using a tool, like Google Maps and Google Earth in that way.
Wow.
The other cool thing that I can do as well, and this is something for the future, is I can move that map onto how the coastlines looked back in the medieval period. So if you think England looks like England in the map today, back then, it really doesn't.
Yeah. That's wild. Oh my goodness. So now what you have today is that the little video that we've been looking at sort of demonstrates the map as it's flat, but you're talking about how it interacts with Google Earth, which is what we were looking at when I was in France with you, and that was just astounding to look at, and so people will be able to do that.
Yeah. Yep, with ease. Yes, and like.
How do you make that interact? I mean, is it difficult? Is it?
No, it's as straightforward as clicking a button.
Oh.
So there might be on the website, for example, for those subscribers to click on a basic map, and I would recommend doing that if you want to try and visit them all. Good luck. Yeah. It'll take you about 200 years, I think, even with a car. But if you were to then click on the Google Earth and you wanted to play around with that, then you can do. The only thing that you can't do is download the map site, unfortunately.
Wow. Well, we'll keep everyone posted when that is available, but I'm just very excited about it because it's just something that's not been done, and I think it's going to be so useful.
Well, I never thought anyone would want to look at it. It was always my ambition to try and visit as many as possible. It was a bit of a selfish reason for originally creating the map.
Well, what was it that you figured out? If you went to every site, it would take you how long?
It was 100. It was 199 years. Everything that's on there. So it took Google about 15 minutes to do this, but it connected the most efficient routes between them all. And it turned out if you spent 30 minutes roughly at each site, it'd take you around about 200 years to do them any justice, assuming that you're going to go to sleep, that is.
Yeah. Well, that's what's fun about, people, downloading it and participating in it, because people can send us photographs, of a site that they got a chance to go by nearby where they live or something like that. And you could just, keep adding to it. But now you've got how many sites now? Like 2,000 sites or something?
Yeah, and that includes, it's not just preceptories, but I've mainly focused on that, but these are Templar buildings. So some of them, in fact, most of them, you can still go and visit. Some of them are markers of where there was a site, but that's relatively clear on each of the courses that you collect.
Yeah. So they're all buildings, or, like we've been places where we'll see like some kind of a marker or a monument or something like that has some sort of Templar connection. Are those kinds of things, those little standalone things, or is it strictly structures?
So these were strictly structures that they had.
That many?
Yeah, and like I say, I wouldn't even like to guess how many more I need to still add. But once that's done, happy days.
Oh man, it's going to be so much fun when you actually get it up there and people get a chance to look at it and have some fun with it. I know, I was just clicking on those crosses, and it was amazing. It bring up a little information, a photograph of what was there. It was really nice. So
It would be great to try and have a team of people to catalogue each of the sites to take pictures. I mean, I think that would be, in my view anyway, a gift to the Templar research community.
Yeah,
that was really one of the key things that I wanted to do, and to have a look at the concentration of these buildings. I mean, they owned a vast amount of property.
Gosh, that's really well. Now, when you say you need a team of people, or you'd like to have a team of people, what would they be doing? What kind of help would it be that would be useful?
In a perfect world, to go and visit some sites, perhaps go walking with your dog, or walk a cat before. I don't know, but to go and stroll, to go for a drive somewhere near you, and to see what's there. Is there any more to the history of that place that we can add?
Yeah, that would be amazing, and we could attach the photo and give them photo credit, and that would be really cool. Well, goodness, it is time for us to take our break. So when we come back, more with James Martin. We've got the Tim Wallace Murphy interview coming up that I know you won't want to miss. It's going to be toward the last half hour. So hang in there, and we will be right back.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button, so just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
Welcome back to Night Vision. I'm your host, Renee Barnett. I'm here with my colleague, Night Vision historian James Martin. He's over here in France, where I just got back from after spending a wonderful 6 weeks there. Oh, it was nice. And, but it's back to the old grindstone here in Los Angeles. And, but we'll continue on with our research. We're going to give James a break after tonight and let him off for a couple weeks, and then he'll be back with us again. But we've got a great show planned for next week, which I'll tell you about toward the end. But you know, when we were talking today about Chartres Cathedral and about Rosslyn, and you know, I was saying, you know, I feel like we should talk about Rosslyn. I don't know why. And then later you said, "Oh, I've got something that I would like to say about Rosslyn." So, what was that? And it sounds like you've got something to kind of reveal.
Well, one of the key parts of the Rosslyn mystery has been: is there any connection with the Knights Templar? And I suppose there is, but it's not a positive thing. You know, it's to do really with the. I was just reading through some notes I'd made not too long ago, where I was looking at someone's ancestry, if you must know. And it turns out on the 17th of November in 1309, a Henry and William Sinclair gave evidence against the only two Knights Templar that were tried in Scotland, Walter of Clifton, and he says in his testimony, and I can provide you with some links to the interrogation document which I was reading. And he'd been a member of the Temple for 10 years and had been received into it somewhere that was on the map, actually, at Temple Brewer in Lincoln. And the other knight was William de la Moore, who is said to be a Scottish knight. So one of those, you know, the connection between Rosslyn Chapel and the Templars is one that there aren't any references to it really prior to the 1700s, where you get a real revision of Templar history, I suppose.
Well, Rosslyn was built like in 1500 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was built during the Templar heyday.
No,
it doesn't
absolutely
want to be a Templar structure. In other words,
no. I mean, it started in off the top of my head, I want to say I won't say 1451 exactly, but I think it's around that period. Forgive me a few years, but it's, you know, it's a good 100 years plus, 20, 30 years since the Templars had disbanded. However, there are members of the Sinclair family who end up as members of the Garde Écossaise, the Scots Guard in France, which shared some similarities, not entirely 100%, but some similarities to the Templar Order in terms of the families who were known Templars, who were members of it. So, you know, you can look back in history and say, well, they were Templars, so therefore, you know, a couple of 100 years later, it must be a Templar building. It isn't. The current chapel most certainly wasn't. I mean, what's interesting about the chapel for me is that I think it was William Sinclair, who's often called Prince, and you get Prince Henry Sinclair and you get Prince William Sinclair. Prince of what? There aren't any principalities. This is again something that comes from the 1700s.
So you're saying that these two Sinclairs, William and Henry, testified against the Templars.
Yes.
That's odd, or, you know, that's new. We haven't heard that. And are you talking about the Henry Sinclair, or is this talking about Henry Sinclair?
No, this would have been his granddad. You know, is an ancestor. But I suppose they must have known when they were building the chapel there that their ancestors had done that. But this said, one of the key reasons I find Rosslyn interesting, just for a totally different reason than anything you're expecting me to say, is that it's small.
Yeah.
And there's a notion that it could have been something a little larger. Now, there has been some idea that it was going to be this great cathedral. Now, if it was a great cathedral, that would have brought in quite a bit of money. And I think one of the problems is there was a bit of a tussle between William Sinclair and his son and the then King of Scotland. Now, they were the Earls of Orkney, the Jarls of Orkney, who they owed their allegiance not just to the Scottish crown, but actually the Orkneys were under the control of the Norse, or by this period, what was called the Kalmar Union. And due to a deal with the Scottish king, and I think the king, I think it was King Christian the First of Denmark, he was leader of the Kalmar Union, which basically encompassed Norway, Sweden, Denmark into one big country, one big united kingdom, if you will. They'd agreed that Scotland would take control of the earldom of the Orkneys. In fact, Christian ends up reneging on a dowry from a marriage to the Scottish king. What this means for the Sinclairs is the Crown of Scotland now owns all of their land in the Orkneys. They're broke. That might explain why it is that the building of the chapel never extended any further. We don't have enough money to finish it. But what is extraordinary about the building, irrespective of any of that, is the detail inside that that chapel. It is mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing when you go in. And unfortunately, due to it was there were musket marks on the building from Oliver Cromwell's period, where he had his horses stabling inside that chapel. There's been a lot of damage to it. The angels, for example, inside the chapel and outside would have had little inscriptions. They're lost to weathering and due to, well, unfortunately, weathering indoors. You talk about the age-old tale of the church roof needs repairing. That was most certainly true at Rosslyn. But there's a lot of issues to debunk. Kathy has just asked a question. Did I say the name Macquiston? If I did, I was being very quick. Walter of Clifton is what I said. Walter of Clifton was a brother from a Knights Templar. He was a knight from Temple Brewer at Lincoln. The other name I mentioned was William de la Moor, who was a Scottish Templar, who was brought into the order.
Is right there next to Lincoln Cathedral, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the grounds, on the same grounds. Yeah, in Lincolnshire. But now, what was the testimony that they gave? What were they being accused of? And what was it that the Sinclairs confirmed?
I'm going to have to summarize this. The testimony, and I'm more than happy to share this so we can put it up on the YouTube link and what have you. But the testimony itself is many pages long, and it was the usual. Don't think that this is Robert the Bruce and the followers of William Wallace who were interrogating the Templars. Scrub that from your mind. England the Normans, actually, they're referred to, these Normans, these English, Irish, and I'm sure the word Breton shows up on there. Welsh was the other one. Yes, it was a Breton, as in someone from Brittany, had taken a lot of the area around Lothian, around Edinburgh, a lot of Scotland, and this is midway through the Wars for Scottish Independence. So it wasn't Robert the Bruce who was interrogating the Templars. It most certainly was the English. And off the top of my head, there was some John of Brittany, and there was John de Soleur, who was the chaplain to the Pope. There was the Bishop of St. Andrews, who was William Lamberton, met at Holyrood, and quote, for the trial of the knights and two brethren of that order undernamed, the only persons of the order present in the kingdom of Scotland, by command of our most holy Lord Clement V. And it was the usual deal. It was the you have committed homosexual acts, you have committed blasphemy, the usual stuff, really. Now, there were more than two Templars in Scotland, of course, but they were the two that appear in the testimony. It reads like a lot of the other interrogation reports of the time. The usual stuff, really, Renee.
I mean, and how were the Sinclairs supposed to have obtained this information? Did they say?
Well, that's interesting in itself. As you go through some of the interrogation reports, it reads as if they had knowledge of the brothers, which in itself isn't too surprising. You've got you've got people who are going on crusade with each other. You've got people from Scotland before the Wars for Independence. People who were going on crusade. In fact, Robert the Bruce's father, grandfather, all took the cross, went on crusade. This was the done thing, and so anyone who knew any Templar was brought in to testify.
Mm.
But it's unusual with this in mind, unless this is a false interrogation. It's unusual to then see that at some point in the future they built a chapel. The Templars built a chapel after they played a part in the demise, at least, of two knights. I didn't find what happened to them. I'm not too sure whether they were like many of the English Templars, told to go and retire somewhere, or whether they were in fact executed. I would need to do some more reading on that.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah, we're talking about the detail in Rosslyn. It's overwhelming, really. I mean, there's just something everywhere you look. There's so much detail and so much symbolism, and things that, of course, people are still discovering, and that people are still interpreting, like the musical cues that you see. That's only, in recent years sort of been figured out that is, represents musical notes and some sort of a song or a tune. But
again, you using the principle of cymatics,
which supposedly they didn't know anything about back in the days of when it was built. So certainly somebody knew something, and it's interesting that that obviously they knew what they were doing. So that information or that knowledge had been there, but was somehow suppressed or lost, and then rediscovered centuries later.
Again, one of the issues, and I've listened to the song, the Roslyn chant. It's you can when you look at the cymatics, you just hear one tone. And yet, if you then extend that into Gregorian chants, things like that, it marries up perfectly. The only problem is some of those cubes have been restored, and whether or not they've been restored exactly might change the alleged song.
Right.
Again, one of the issues with Roslyn, like a lot of things, comes back to the Victorian period, where they thought they were repairing the building, and when Victoria reconsecrate, actually, was it ever a church or was it a college? Good question. I'll just throw that one out there. But when Victoria, who is very interested in Roslyn, they begin to repair it. The descriptions of we talk about the green men, so I'm just wearing my little green man at the moment.
Oh, yes, yeah.
See if I can give you a better shot. But the idea of green men, they were actually green with moss and algae, and the place was under absolute ruin. And one of the things they did is sort of seal up a lot of the columns and a lot of the buildings, and unfortunately they didn't repair the roof, but they didn't stop the water coming in, and so it actually had the effect of nearly destroying all of that intricacy, and a lot of restoration is still ongoing in that chapel. And the problem with that restoration, I'm not in any way criticizing any of the masons, but the subtle detail might be lost. I'm not saying it has been, far from it in a lot of times, but it's possible. And certainly with those cubes, if they're not exactly as they were, then perhaps the song is different. And of course, one thing I really enjoy, I think it was in the 70s, 80s, that the song was sort of decoded, and then I know that it's been played for the first time a few years back. I was present. Maybe it wasn't the first, but that's certainly what they were telling us. In this short period, we've had another myth develop that well, actually, the song will open the secret treasure chest of Roslyn. So this is another myth that started in our time, and I've heard that repeated and all of this. But yeah, it's really it's a fascinating building, and the reason for those depictions in this way. Can you imagine if you were in the, I don't know, let's say 1500, and it's complete or very nearly complete, and you can't read and you can't write, but what you can do is look with your eyes and see this great story. It's you've got biblical expressions, you've got expressions from the New Testament. Crucially, what we must remember about Scotland in this time, up until the Reformation, there was still, as I was reading this not so long ago, but anyway, the old religion, AULD, the old religion, in some ways is still being practiced. You have this this depiction of people running into a nearby town to drag summer in, and I know with the weather in France, that's what a lot of the locals are trying to do. But you've still got these old pagan ways still very much being undertaken, and you've got gypsies who were called Egyptians, by the way, in the old documents, which I thought was interesting. There is actually a Scottish bill that was passed banning Egyptians from Scotland, which I just thought was very odd.
That's funny. Yeah.
But here we go. You've got this this story unfolding. You've got these gypsies who are telling, who are undergoing plays, fertility rituals. Robin Hood is played. You've got these pillars. The pillars themselves are interesting. Perhaps depictions of the original cross, actually, which wasn't ever a cross. It was always just a single pillar. And you have all of this here, and visually, can you imagine if were these painted? And you walk in there, and wow! And here we can see, everyone, there's a picture of one of the columns with this sort of DNA helix. Actually, this particular column has 4 bands coming up the column. Could be a depiction. In fact, I know from my own Norse studies that this isn't too far away from some depictions from Odin. The idea of dragging water up or dragging knowledge up. Odin on his quest for knowledge and all of this. All of this is depicted there, including perhaps some corn and maize and cacti.
Yes, that's really odd too, because there's very clearly what looks very clearly like corn or maize, which of course is not grown in that area. How would they have known that had they not, been westward? Also, in that same picture, you can see those little cubes on stems up that line that archway there. I guess that's in what's called the Lady Chapel.
Yeah, what's interesting there is the first depiction of someone playing on a pipe carved in stone. And if anyone listening to this has the opportunity to get to Rosslyn, then I would recommend the following. If you've never been, go spend some time looking at those cubes and look out for all of the musical references, including a depiction of an angel with a rope. Some have said that that's the devil, the fallen angel, Lucifer. No. No, the depiction's being dragged down, not being suspended. In fact, I think it's a reminder to look up, as above, so below. There's plenty of Masonic influence at Rosslyn. But have a listen to the tour guide if you've never been for 30 minutes. They're absolutely superb. The tour guides. Listen to the story. Dismiss about 95% of what they have to say. It's a great story. It's like a Disney film. It's full of nonsense. And then go and explore yourself as best you can be. There's some nonsense about a master and apprentice, which every time I'm in there, I either have to keep my mouth shut from using a few curse words, or I just smile at this.
Same thing at Temple Church in London. There is some good info there, and very friendly and cordial. But obviously, they have an agenda, and they're going to push that no matter what.
When did they put the good info there?
I don't know.
New one on me.
Enjoyable. It was enjoyable. But
go and have a look in. Go and have a look in the crypts as well. You can still see mason marks down there. And in fact, you can still see some of the marks in which they were chiseling stone. You can still see some depictions of arches. You can every time you go into Rosslyn, you will see something new. Just keep in the back of your head a few things. One, you're not going to see everything. Every time you go in, something new. Two, put yourself in the shoes of John or Jane the muck shoveler, who can't read or write. It's dark outside, and you go in and you see this in colour with stained glass, which has been restored. It's not the same. But just imagine that. And I'm going to let everyone into a bit of a secret, if I can do, Renee.
Okay.
If you go outside the building, as you leave the visitor centre, you'll see one side, or I'd like for you to go onto the other side and just have a look towards the entrance to the ladies' entrance. You can go into that if you want, but I want you to look out for the depiction that's currently up on screen. Stand around 12 foot away, at least. Don't ask me what that is in meters. 5 meters. I don't... Anyway, just stand a distance away from it, and just look in the eyes of this particular carving. With big ears, it looks like a Ferengi. And then when you get around 3-4 foot away, just move slightly to the left or to the right. And what you'll notice is it follows you. It looks at you. It watches every movement. A little reminder that you're always under the watch of God. And that's the idea. But that's just little secret for you. You won't see many people doing it, so please, give it a try if you're fortunate enough to get over to Edinburgh and to Rotterdam.
Yeah, I mean, it is an amazing place, and so much to see, and in a way, Chartres is similar in that respect, in that there's quite a lot to see. There are things that that you don't notice the first time around, and then you come back by. There are odd things that people are always trying to interpret. There's the representation of the Ark of the Covenant there, and there's a little African boy there. Some people have interpreted that to say that the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia, which of course there are stories of that. I'm not sure I buy into that, but I did notice the other, I hated to see it. There was some kind of action going on there in Ethiopia, and I guess there was some damage to Lalibela, the Templar building. Excuse me. But it's very similar. We talked about the labyrinth in Chartres, but there are also, and I know you traveled there before with Tim, right?
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to get a personal tour with Tim. I was with another gentleman who's a vicar, David. And we had a look around Chartres. That was the first time. Had a very strange experience afterwards. Apparently, everyone has a Chartres experience, and I most certainly did. But yeah, it was just too much. It really too much to take in this way. It was,
when you were there with Tim, what did he point out specifically? What were the high points of what he wanted you to see?
Two things, really. So I've just put a picture. There was Tim on the giving me a quick tour around. Actually, he wanted me to explore myself. He did point out one thing which was interesting. As you go through the main tourist entrance as it is today, and go round the cathedral to the right.
Oops.
If you go around the cathedral to the right and just notice some of the original stained glass, one of them has a hole in it. It's about the size of I don't know, a pea. Then, if you can locate that, have a look on the floor and you'll see a nail hammered in. It's a very, very old nail. Goes back to one of the many construction phases of Chartres. And the idea was that when the sun shined through that stained glass, it would line up with the nail on a particular saint's day.
Oh my gosh. Which window was it? Do you remember? Was it one of the rose windows or?
It's not a rose window. This is as you walk straight into the cathedral. If you bear right and follow the wall round, when you get to the first set of windows, there's I don't know how you'd explain it, but there's a set of windows just to the side. There's a sort of room. This is long before you get anywhere near the choir or anything like that. But there's a sort of alcove. You can't miss the windows. Just have a look through them. And it's about a third the way up and a third the way across. One of the key reasons they're just in with glass, it's the third the way up and the third the way across actually happens to be one of the weaker points in glass. But see if you can see it. If not, look for the nail on the ground. There's only one. When you see that, turn around, have a look for glass, and see if you can spot the hole. As for the rest, well, outside was the only other place that Tim wanted me to have a good look at. And this is known as the Portal of the Initiates. And this is a fascinating, absolutely fascinating part of the building. It's on the outside. And yes, there's depictions of the Ark of the Covenant. And there's some very interesting depictions. There's again, this place is designed, in my view, to absolutely make you feel so totally insignificant, but also to learn. And the key thing between Chartres and Rosslyn is that they're collegiate chapels. They're there for learning. And the Portal of the Initiate has particular bits of symbology that would certainly be familiar to a Freemason and to anyone who is studying the esoteric nature of medieval Europe and in fact today. It is astounding. And the other thing to note at Chartres is the glass. The glass is known as Chartres blue. And I would recommend, if you can get to see it, unfortunately, the last time I was at Chartres, the French government had decided it was going to whitewash a lot of the building. And they said, we wanted to restore the building to how it looked when it was finished. Well, I've got news for you folks. The building was never finished. It wasn't a case of everyone put the tools down. It's the 21st of August. We've done. This, it took time. It was never white. The candle, smoke, the rest of the general fumes over time added to the nature of it. Unfortunately, it's been whitewashed. But the stained glass is protected. And the stained glass, the Chartres blue, which you've just seen some images of, gives an ever so slight UV glow. We don't know to this day how it was produced. We know roughly when the technology was lost, but we don't know how it was produced. An interesting note, during interrogation during the Second World War, it was discovered that blue and purple blue and purple light has very peculiar properties with human beings. One of them being it opens your mind to more susceptibility and also to potentially extra physical thoughts. But that's just a very interesting thing to note. a lot of people feel strong energy there. There are certain symbols across that cathedral, and again, I would go and have a look in the crypt for more on that.
Yeah, I'm assuming you went down there and noticed the water source down below. That seems to be a common theme among these locations, where cathedrals and churches are placed. Do you know what might have been in that location before the cathedral?
It's alleged that there was a Celtic, we're going back to pre-Roman period, but it's alleged that there was a Celtic site of extreme spiritual and religious significance there. That there were various rivers that or streams that joined on the area, and the church did what the church does. After the Romans had built a temple, the new gods were in town. Then the church came along and said the new god is in town. If you're going there to worship, why bother trying to get people to go somewhere else? You just build on top. Now, I say alleged. There's certainly some debate at the moment in terms of in some academic circles as to whether or not that was the case. I tend to think it was, though, namely because of flowing water sources, and the place most certainly is very typical for certainly Roman sites. Chartres gets its name from its previous Roman name. The name itself comes from it's the Carnutes, which is it's a Celtic tribe, and it means roughly the place of stone, but not quite. And that was the name of the tribe. Now, quite what that means, I'm not too sure. To be fair, when I've studied Celtic, when I studied Rome, it was in Britain. But Carnutes eventually corrupts then into Chartres. There was another idea as well that the Chartres actually comes from a charter that was for the foundation of the cathedral. Look, the cathedral has burnt down a lot of times too. It's not just been, it's not one continuous building. It's like a lot of very ancient buildings. There's different building periods, which have all added their own bits and pieces. But it was done apparently without an architect, with a lot of money, and that sort of stuff. There's a question around whether or not it was an import from Syria. Honestly, I think it's, forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly.
Stained glass.
Yeah, audio, whether or not it had come from Syria. The technology certainly could have done. I very much doubt that the glass did. If you imagine, you've got to get it over very bumpy roads from a part of the world at that period that was not exactly friendly to the invasion of their territory by Christian kingdoms. The technology, most certainly. I actually think that if you want to look at the glass a little bit more, there are depictions in ancient Egypt of why bother getting and mining expensive diamonds and rubies and all of this when we can actually just develop the technology to stain glass ourselves? Not stupid to do that. And I think that's probably where the technology eventually came. But I don't believe it came from all that way weather.
We were talking about that blue. It reminds me of the lapis blue that the Egyptians used a lot, the lapis stones, that color blue. But
lapis lazuli, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that was in.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, we haven't figured that out yet, obviously, exactly how they did it. But so what about the, were there any other things that, Tim pointed out specifically? I never got a chance to go there with him. And I would like to know, what jumped out at him. And then, aside from that, what jumped out at you that he might not have pointed out? Because I think everybody has their own experience.
One of the key things was with Tim when he took you around was really for you to absorb things, and if you had any questions, to explore that later. So it wasn't a case of go over there, have a look at this, get a picture here. It was more for me to explore, and we weren't meant to go to Chartres, but we did, and we spent 4 hours there. It meant that the onward journey, we ended up arriving in Carcassonne something about 5 a.m.
Oh gosh!
It was a continuous drive. I know I was driving, but it was well worth it. The two very key parts for me was the hole in the stained glass, but crucially the portal of the initiates. The water source was interesting, but the initiates portal, fascinating.
Yeah. Very interesting. What about the Black Madonnas? What do you feel about those? What do you feel that's a representation of?
Well, as I've discussed before, I know we've got a video of Tim coming up, but just very, very, very quickly. As I've said to you, Mary Magdalene may very well have been from Ethiopia, and of course, in the Middle East at the time, people did have names. Of course, James, John, Sarah, Michael, David, Thomas, didn't they? Perhaps not. I think they're depictions of the true colour of the skin of Mary Magdalene, and not to be explained away by candles.
Like the secret, Magdalene, or she's black because it's secret, like the occult, and it has to be kept suppressed. Who knows? But yeah, we do have a video of Tim Wallace Murphy, and again, if you joined us a little bit late, Tim was our dear friend. He was family, really, and we lost him a couple of years ago. But the body of work that he's left behind is a tremendous legacy, and being able to have spent time with him over the years was just such a gift. And great stories, great memories. But toward the end of his life, James did an interview with Tim, and we'd like to play that for you coming up. And, you've heard us talk about France for the past 6 weeks, and some of Tim's interview addresses that area that we're talking about. And he also has a little advice for us. So shall we play it now?
There we go. So in your lifetime, there's been a number of significant historical events. Which one has had the most impact on your life outlook?
Within my lifetime, first of all, the Second World War. I grew up and came to some semblance of maturity during that. And it's a time I shall never forget. Northampton was 50 miles from Coventry, and I could see Coventry burning from my bedroom window on the top floor, with the comfortable knowledge that my father, as a doctor and a member of the St. John's Ambulance Brigade, was there trying to help people. I never forgot that. The next really big event was probably the most important politically, the foundation of the National Health Service in Britain. My father, who was just about to lose his privately owned practice, cheered. He said, now I can treat people according to their need, not according to their wallet. Apart from that, despite the fact that I was a political activist for many years, I can't remember any significant change that came about as a result of anything I did. I remember very vividly sitting outside on the pavement and on the roadway outside the American Embassy in Grosvenor Square with the statutory pocket full of marbles and ball bearings. And if you want to know what they're for, they're to scatter on the roadway if the police bring the horses in. The next big one was, I think, Live Aid. And then I realised that the young, who'd had a very bad press up to this time, were far more concerned and involved than I ever believed, and were prepared to get off their arse and do something about what they believed. Close, hard on the heels of that, at a time when Maggie Thatcher was describing Nelson Mandela as a terrorist, was the Free Nelson Mandela concert. And the changeover of power in South Africa. Everybody who'd worked in that state in the apartheid era had never expected any changeover of power to occur without a bloodbath. And thanks to goodwill on both sides, the influence of Mandela and that saintly man, Desmond Tutu, that all passed peacefully. And Tutu's idea of reconciliation by committee, inquiry, sounded crazy, but it worked. And that shows the power of spiritual thinking to influence the real life we live in today. And it's very easy, particularly at the moment in Britain, or in the States for that matter, to think that the worn-out capitalist system is so powerful and so all-pervasive that we can't do a bloody thing about it. Yes, we bloody well can, and yes, it's already being done. Trump backed out of the Paris Accord on climate change. But you look at the record of the large number of towns and cities in the States who are implementing ecologically friendly policies in defiance of that crazy idea of Trump. And then, I think I was about 85, I was a mere stripling in those days, exiled in France, where I have to suffer from my art in such wonderful surroundings. I was given the most precious gift of them all, realistic hope of a socialist revival in Britain. Thanks to the hundreds of thousands of young people who started flocking to the labour movement to support Jeremy Thorpe. The young people are the key to every problem. It doesn't matter whether that's an economic problem, a political problem, or an ecological problem. Think of the young not only as the building blocks for the future, but as the prime movers of change. And they've got to the point where whichever perspective they use to look at the existing system, they say there's got to be something better. But they're not content to bleat about it. They do things. And I suppose I'm very lucky. I get to meet a few of them. Through the medium of Skype, I'm still occasionally involved. Never kid yourself that one person can't make a bloody difference. Change comes about as a result of collective action. And politically and spiritually, I'm involved in a we program. I wrote a book back in the 80s which never got published, which was provisionally titled Gaia, From the Garden of Eden to the Greenhouse Effect. And it traced man's spiritual development and his changing attitudes to the environment from the Stone Age to the present. Most publishers said it was a work of brilliance, but far too frightening. I was scaremongering, and it never got published. The research that went into it was incorporated in a purely spiritual book called Hidden Wisdom. But if we don't change our ways, the human race is doomed. The earth will continue to revolve, the seasons will continue to change, but we won't be bloody well here to see it. We have an imperative to survive, and that demands change. Doesn't suggest it, it demands it. And belatedly, and slowly, far too slowly, we're beginning to get collective action on an international basis, apart from idiots like Trump. But there's an old Jewish proverb that describes him and those who support him. You can't educate pork already. Don't waste your time.
You've written many books about the Templars and with the success of the Da Vinci Code. The area of France in which you live has seen an explosion of people on a quest. If you had to correct the Da Vinci Code and its treasures, how would you do so?
I wouldn't bother to correct it. It's a piece of fiction, it's a thriller, and it's bloody beautifully done. What I would do is perhaps write a couple of essays pointing out the reality that lies behind it. Despite its fictional nature and a few howling errors, there's a lot of truth in the Da Vinci Code. But the truth is not factual truth. It's spiritual truth. Yes, it's created an explosion of interest in this part of France, from which I benefit. As I say, I'm not exactly in the first bloom of youth, but I get employed as a tour guide and a talking head on other people's tours on a regular basis, which helps pay the grocer. My son says it's a tragedy that at my age I have to work, and I say, you're looking at it through the wrong end of the telescope, Francois. It's a bloody miracle I still get the opportunity. This place is invaded year on year, quite literally by tens of thousands of people, and they nearly all come for the wrong reasons. They're looking for the Magdalene, who probably never was here at all. They've taken the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, hook, line and sinker. And that, the only importance of that book is the fact that it attracts people to this area. and has shown them an alternative possibly to Christianity. They come for the wrong reasons, but they're entranced by the countryside, by the magic of it, and by the real history of tolerance, of the Cathars. I've got a tour booked for later in April of people investigating their Jewish heritage, because part of this area was a Jewish princedom for several centuries. And it was down here, as well as in Spain and northern Italy, that the Kabbalah first took written form. There is so much to explore here and to fascinate that I give a loud cheer to Henry Lincoln, to Dan Brown, and all the others who've stimulated interest here. Henry's an old friend, not merely a colleague. And I remember sitting with him in the Jardin de Marie in Rennes-le-Château a few years ago, and he said, "Tilly, I don't know what we sit at the same table for. We don't agree on anything." I said, "Yes, we do. We agree on essentials, like where to have coffee in Rennes-le-Château or where to have a meal together. For all its flaws, the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail has done the world a service. It turned a steady trickle of interest in spiritual matters into a tidal wave of intense curiosity, which I hope never ceases."
There was Jim Wallace Murphy. James, thank you so much for providing that for us and having the presence of mind to get that down for us, so that we all had that to chew on after Tim's passing. We miss him so much. Thank you, James. James is going to have a couple weeks off, and next week we're going to have a brand new show with a wonderful friend of mine called Ian Withers. There's this book right there, Private Eye, Secret Spy. He's got a plethora of stories about his work in the past. I mean, it's crazy. From his work on the Roberto Calvi incident, God's Banker. He even worked for us on Bloodline in investigating Nick Haywood of the Priory of Zion. So we'll find out all about that and some of his other stories next week on the next edition of Night Vision. Thanks, everybody, and good night.
Thank you.